call the Bremen High School District 228 Committee to Home meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Canning?
Here.
Mrs. Gleason here. Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mrs. Jones? Here. Mrs. Campworth? Here. Mrs. Dressler? Here. Mrs. Smith?
Here. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Comments? Presentation.
Someone go? No. As Brittany goes through our presentation tonight, I want you to think of a couple of things. There's some things that we're already in the works for. We're beyond making decisions about. We've committed to them. We're full go. There's other parts of our agenda tonight where we have some idea of what we want to do. We don't know what the state's going to do to us. It's in a tentative planning stage, so as you ask your questions, keep in mind what we're committed to and what we're going to need your leadership on to give us the direction. What we're going to present tonight is a framework, and like my father-in-law used to say, you can do anything with time and money. And that's what we have to decide. Do we want to spend the money, or do we want to slow the time to accumulate the money? So keep those big picture things in mind as we progress, and hopefully we got a plan for you.
So, hello everyone, welcome to the District 228 Capital Investment Program meeting. Tonight we're going to do a wrap up of phase 1 of our construction, look towards where we're going with phase 2, and then give you an overview of potential capital projects that we could be looking at through fiscal year 2022. I will turn it over to Dr. Rob Grossi, our district financial advisor, who's going to present the district's financial history and some projections. And then hopefully by the July 2018 board meeting, we'll have some directions from you guys, kind of where you're feeling like we're going. And then hopefully this meeting will give you all of the necessary information to help you provide an informed decision. So obviously, the turf fields are one of the biggest pieces of phase 1 construction. These were a great investment for our district. They not only made our football team safer during practices and games, but they look amazing and they've been a great asset to each building and each of our football teams.
And they answer the drainage question for projects as well.
And I see PE when I go past some of the buildings, they're taking advantage of it. Great.
So obviously, like we just mentioned, the major projects that were completed were obviously the turf fields, our football stadium lighting, the track surfaces around the turf fields, and then our gym floors. So the QSCD total that was spent for phase 1 was $9.3 million. But as you recall, the turf fields could not be part of the qualified school construction bond monies that were spent. So we did want to break that down for you so you can see the turf fields were not paid with QSCD money. We came in at $11 million, and it's important to highlight that the original budget was $11,050,000, so we did come in under, which is an important piece of the phase 1 wrap up. And it's also important to highlight here that we were able to do additional things. So we came in under budget and still got the stadium lighting and the gym floors.
And some additional excavation that was supposed to be in phase 2 while we're out there. So some of our phase 2 work was done in phase 1. So that's pretty good.
So all the fields on the cost are 1.7?
The actual carpet, the actual turf carpet.
Oh, okay.
But the infrastructure was in the bonds.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. We just could not actually pay for the turf carpet that is on the field right now. Okay, so looking forward to phase 2, obviously the biggest piece of this is going to be our field house completions. These are going to be another great asset to our buildings and our communities. There's a great deal of excitement surrounding these buildings. We're really excited to be able to offer such wonderful facilities for our students.
And we're pretty committed to it.
So you guys know we are actually committed to these projects. They're already they've already been approved by the board and under contract. So some additional, these are a breakdown of the buildings. Basically, we've got the field houses, the classrooms, the fitness centers, and the training rooms. These are all part of phase 2. And the estimated costs for these projects we have broken down by fiscal year. So this fiscal year, 2015, we're looking at spending approximately $3.5 million. In fiscal year 2019, we'll be at $44 million. And then in fiscal year 2020, we'll be at $8.5 million. This puts us at a grand total of $56 million. Now, of that $56 million, we've got $41.8 million remaining from qualified school construction bond, and then the rest of it, the remaining $14.1 will be paid with regular district funds. It's also important to highlight here, though, that all of the qualified school construction bond money needed to be spent by December of 2019. So that was part of the initial plan, so that money will be gone by then. So these next few slides are going to show some potential capital building projects that are completely separate and aside from phases 1 and 2 of the initial construction plan. We do have these broken down by fiscal year and by school. However, we have already begun committing to projects in fiscal year 2019. So these projects that you're looking at right now, these have already we've already begun putting plans together for. You'll start seeing bid documents and things like that as we move forward. All of these building project recommendations were put together by both building and district administrators. So we made sure to include everybody who would be a part of this to make sure that we got all of the necessary items and necessary projects accounted for. It is important to highlight here, though, that these numbers that you're going to see, they are estimates and they are subject to change as we move forward here. So, and as I mentioned, we have already begun committing to projects for the summer. So here you'll notice that we have all of our sound system upgrades. Each of the buildings is getting that. And another important thing to highlight here is the domestic water piping project at Bremen High School. We're really excited about this because we are able to complete it in-house with our district plumber. So we are going to be saving almost $1 million on this project alone just by having someone in-house to do it. We also have on this list science furniture upgrades. The science labs needed some renovations, so we're looking towards doing that. And we have projected costs for fiscal year 2019 at $1.8 million.
So a couple things, a couple of curveballs that were thrown at us, which makes it difficult to be precise in the budget. Remember I talked about preciseness. The gym floor repair, we know about that. We're still working on that, but we're committing funds for it to make sure we have the floor done correctly. We don't know what money we're going to get back and what that's going to take us, but we're going to be out there fighting for that. The main entry repair at Oak Forest, that was an unforeseen with that last snow. If you see the plywood in the front entrance, we'll have that all repaired. That was not in our original budget 2 years ago, neither was the canopy in the back for the mobile classroom. So we know that we're going to get curveballs along the way with our buildings. So you have to make sure you're aware of that, and you have to make sure you're aware of what the state's going to do to us in the financing. So keep those things in mind. We talked about fluidity and what we're working on.
Was Bremen still getting the cafeteria?
That's down the road. That's,
Okay.
yeah, it's on a list.
Okay.
I have a question about I'm sorry. The pump here at Tinley. You know, we've had some issues with that lately, right?
Right.
I mean, where are we at with that? And that's a huge number for that.
Right, I don't know if Mr. Masterson has something to comment
So
on that.
the pump at Tinley, we're working on that, we're in design and engineering what we need
Okay.
to make that work.
Is this the pump that takes the water into the forest preserve?
Yes, yes. So we're looking at getting, doing some upgrades to it.
Repairing
Right.
what we have now.
That wasn't new though, right? That pump's
No, there
old.
was existing, but it
Oh,
wasn't.
okay, I
was
thought
small
it
and
was
wasn't-
put in with the field.
No,
Okay.
no. So we're experiencing some success because of the football field and the drainage.
Okay.
But that capacity will lessen when we build the building, we take all of that, take the water. So now the water's being drained in, so it's necessary.
Okay.
So looking forward to fiscal year 2020, some of these are pretty self-explanatory. Some of the biggest ones were the tennis courts at Bremen. Those are in need of replacement due to deterioration, so we've definitely got that on the list. The other thing was the softball and baseball dugouts. Some of these are really deteriorated as well, so they are going to be renovated, and then they'll be moved further from home plate to assess some safety issues that we were looking at there.
That's a Tinley, Hillcrest doesn't have existing.
So when we talk baseball / softball, is it baseball and softball, or?
Hillcrest does not have baseball or softball
Right.
dugouts, so we're adding both. And Hillcrest, Tinley has baseball dugouts that are existing, but they're very close to home plate, so we have netting up now. We're going to move them down the line just for a safety precaution. But everybody else's dugouts are in pretty good shape.
What about the tennis court? I know the tennis court was moved over to me, and then Hillcrest had one. We had moved some of them.
Those are Oak Forest and Tinley in phase one. We had to adjust them, so those aren't listed in there, but those are additional projects as well.
So they're gonna be.
They're
okay.
fine, they're good.
They're done.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's also important to note here that these are based on specific building needs. So you might see one thing at one school's plan and not at another, but again, just based solely on individual school needs. So, and after consulting with building administrators and district administrators, that's kind of how we came up with this comprehensive list. So fiscal year 2021, these projects are fairly costly, but very self-explanatory. Bremen and Hillcrest roofs are 20 plus years old, so they are about at their life expectancy, so that we definitely have those on the list, as well as Tinley Park's band room expansion. This is, due to the roofs, this is going to be probably the most expensive plan, even though it has probably the least amount of savings.
Except for Tinley's boring.
Yeah. Well, the middle.
And then in fiscal year 2022, this is the year we have projected for all of our food service kitchen upgrades and the addition of the cafeteria at Bremen. Bremen is due for an addition due to the fact that they have the least amount of cafeteria space. They're the biggest school with the most amount of students. So we think that the cafeteria addition is necessary there as well. And then all four schools will be getting the kitchen upgrade as well.
Can I ask, why are the prices different on them?
They're all set up differently. So these were numbers that were kind of comprised with our architectural firm as well. So they kind of know the layout of the kitchens. They know what each one's going to require. So
Hillcrest has two different service
Hillcrest is-
areas.
And square footage, obviously, right?
Well, it's really the setup of how their delivery points, you're almost building two kitchens at Hillcrest where everybody else has it packed into one space, so you get a little more efficiency out of it.
We didn't want to make them uniform?
Well, we have to deal with the existing structure and space, yeah. If we could, we would.
So this slide is going to be comprehensive overview of the breakdown of the construction and the capital project. It's broken down by phase one, which is obviously complete. Phase two, which we have already committed to, so we know these numbers are fairly solid. And then the other projects, which are essentially up to the board on how aggressively you want to move forward with these capital projects. So this puts us at approximately $80.7 million total, but like I mentioned, we're already done with phase 1, and we've already almost completed fiscal year 2018's portion of phase 2 as well. So this kind of just gives you a breakdown by the things that we have already committed to. And like I mentioned, we have also started committing to fiscal year 2019. So anything moving forward is what we're going to be looking for board direction on.
3 possible curveballs. One, again, is the state. Second is stuff that fails along the way. Hopefully we can be close to those numbers and build enough cushion in there. And the third is there may be stuff that we haven't even realized yet. We think we've got a good plan to this point, but yeah, the more you go, so.
Where's our change order on this stuff a lot? On the construction project?
There's a built-in contingency of 10 or 15%. 10%. So what we're giving, the number we're giving you is 10% over for change orders within that range, and we were significantly under that this time. That's the kind of stuff that Terry's running around driving himself crazy with, making sure that the change orders don't happen and we get what we signed up for.
And most of the change orders were because of unsuitable soils and things of that nature in phase 1, which is unforeseen.
That's what we're talking about.
We have a little more control as we're going because we're in control of that now. Soil is what we hear.
So at this time, I'd like to invite Dr. Rosia, the district's financial advisor.
So before we begin, it's important to note that our team of 3 has spent hours and hours and hours poring over this, and it comes down to 12 or 15 slides, but the amount of time and effort is just so impressive watching them work, and thank and congratulate all 3 of them for the work they've done with this one. Can I phone them up for you, good chair?
Over the last 2 years, the Board of Education has been asked to make decisions that, and the magnitude of the decisions, are probably amongst the highest ever made by a Board of Education in this school district. In this school district, there's schools closing type issues that are real significant as well. But as far as shaping the future, long term of the school district, you've been asked to make major decisions, and rightfully so. You've asked for a lot of information so that you can make informed decisions. So we spent a lot of time during the qualified school construction bond process, talking to the board, talking to the community, talking to the finance committee, and there's still major decisions that have to be made. As we're showing here, there's going to be approximately $80.7 million worth of capital projects potentially over the, starting in 2017 through 2022. We got about little over $50 million of qualified school construction bonds, plus the interest which has to be used on school construction bonds. So roughly $52 million is from qualified school construction bonds. There's going to be another $28 million if the district embarks on all these projects to finish the completion of this thing. So the next question is going to be, where's that $28 million going to come from? And the first exercise in determining that is to look at what would happen if we just used our fund balance reserves to do that. So the one piece of good news since we last met was that at least for 1 year, the district got a big jump in general state aid of about $3.5 million. And that has definitely had an impact on the district. I've been working with the school district for a lot of years, and at one point in time, the district used to spend $5 to $6 million more than it brought in every year, and the district would borrow money every 4 years or so to help cover those deficits. What this graph shows, through 2017 is audited, and then the rest is projection. But basically in 2015, 16, and 17, your expenditures, again, this is assuming $1 million in capital. Anything above that was considered one-time expenditures. But basically, in spending $1 million a year within your budget on capital, you were spending roughly, this is a better illustration, you were spending roughly $2 to $3 million more a year. So your fund balance reserves were decreasing by, on average, during those last 5 years, of about $2.5 to $3 million. So your fund, which was a lot slower than it used to be, but it was draining your fund balance reserves. Now in 2018, I believe, we'll see what the numbers finally bear out, but it looks like you're going to end up with a surplus for the first time in many years. And that's predicated on two things. One is, as I mentioned, you got about $3.5 million more in general state aid. And then number two, you're getting about $2.1 million of qualified school construction bond subsidy from the federal government. That's the benefit of the program that we got. This district's going to get about $2.1 million a year for the next 25 years as the incentive to do these capital projects, at least the first $52 million of it. So again, based on current projections, and different things could happen, but based on what I believe are realistic projections, where there's a 50% probability it'll be worse, 50% probability it'll be better, it looks like the district is going to run surpluses for the next 3 years. Again, assuming the state does. Bill's thrown the caveat a few times about what the state does, but it appears that they're going to pump up funding again, at least this year, because it's a governor's race, and neither side wants to not do that. So I'm thinking that you're going to get another good chunk of increase, and then the projections show that that's going to fade away. But essentially, the good news is that your fund balance reserves, not counting the extra $28 million of capital projects that you have to do, are going to remain relatively stable, I believe, over the next 5 years. And then just graphically, you could see that in 2014, that was the last bond issue to help fund your operations. And you can see how it's just gradually decreased. Historically, this green line would have been like that, but we've slowed down the slope of the decrease significantly. And then we're projecting, now this is projecting not only what your operations are going to do, but it's also projecting the expenditures in the operating funds over the next 5 years that Brittany showed on her last slide, 2017 to 2022. So our hope would be, on the positive side, the statement that we're making right now, assuming the projections hold true, and assuming that the capital projects are going to be $80 million, is that if you use fund balance reserves and surpluses to pay for that extra $28 million, you'll still have money in the bank in 2022. That's the good news, but also the district will need to recognize that at that point in time, you will be below your 3-month fund balance reserve level. So you're in an area that the Illinois State Board of Education would describe as vulnerable. So again, so as you're starting to formulate how you want to do this, this is where it stands right now. Again, things could happen. If the state keeps pumping up funding by $300 million to $350 million, I have no idea where this money's coming from. Then at least from the school district, I mean, from a taxpayer's perspective, whatever, but from a school district's perspective, it could be a good thing. That this may turn to the better. If the state changes, it may turn worse. If the $80 million becomes $92 million, then all of a sudden $20 million goes down to $8 million, which obviously you don't know at this point in time. Nobody would know at this point in time. So the other aspect, you'll see towards the end, there's 3 components that we're talking about. One is the capital projects, the other is your fund balance reserves, and the other is your borrowing. One of the things, so historically, at least for the last 6 years, your district's tax levy for bonds has been between 9, and then it was $11 million in 2016. It dropped to $9 million last year, and then it's going to, excuse me, yeah, it's dropped to $9 million last year, and then in levy year 2018. So that's when you levy in December of 2018. It's scheduled to drop to $4.2 million and basically be level forever. Not forever, but we borrowed out for 25 years. So, this is where you're, if the district at some point in time is considering debt, this is, the issue is this, is that you're scheduled to have a decrease of about $5 million in tax levy. So if a school district was making a determination that they wanted to borrow funds to keep fund balances up, and I'm not saying that's my recommendation, but if that was a consideration, then a consideration has to be made of whether you envision a situation where let's drop it down. One of the ways you could do it is you could say, you know what, let's bring it all the way back down to 4 million. If the time comes that we need to borrow, then we'll go back up. Which some districts don't like to go back down and up. Other districts, it's not that big of a deal. But so you'll have that option, or another option would be to borrow a little bit a year, and then so it's a more smooth type of transaction.
To our taxpayers.
To the taxpayers. And again, I'm not recommending that you do that, but it's part of the decision-making process that the Board of Education has to consider. So basically, again, approximately $80 million in major capital projects, about $51 to $52 million worth of QSCAD proceeds and interest earnings. If you pay for the shortfall of fund balance reserves, as of now, it looks like you'll still have money in the bank, $19 million, but it will be about 2.5 months worth of fund balance expense reserves. And really, I think that as a Board of Education, you need to look at it this way. There's 3 different things, and there's no perfect answer, right? You can't get $80 million in capital projects and not have it impact fund balances and not borrow. You can't have, if you want to keep fund balances and not borrow, then you can't do $80 million in the capital projects. So again, based on the projections where they stand. So somewhere within these, I think these should be the 3 objectives that in your brain you're kind of trying to balance. Fund balance reserves, what capital projects you want to address, and desired debt levels. Those are the things you have to think about. Now, in terms of timing, if on this area, if you were considering doing a bond issue for that year that it drops off, you have time. You don't have to make that decision now. Probably you would have to start the process in February, because the levy would have to be filed with the county in December, because a levy would have to be filed by February of 2019 with the county if you wanted to capture anything that year. So at a minimum, I'm trying to stay away from recommendations, but at a minimum, at least I would consider waiting until that point in time, because we'll know a couple things by that point in time. One is you'll know how you finish this fiscal year. We're projecting $1.5 million surplus. If you come in way better than that, maybe you wait. If you come in way worse than that, we'll see how that plays out. Number 2 is we'll know how much general state aid you're going to get that following year. We should know by then. So that's another data point. Because I'm assuming you got $3.5 million more this year. I'm assuming you're going to get $2.5 million more the following year from that base. So we'll have an idea if that happens. So there'll be more information for the Board of Education to make a well-informed decision at that point in time.
Is your presumption about the $2.5 million built into this?
Yes.
It is.
It is. So I'm assuming $2.5 million. I'll tell you in a second. Now, per ISB's recommendation and what they're thinking, they want $350 billion a year, $350 million a year for each of the next 10 years. I'm assuming that it's going to be significantly less than that. So I showed you got 3.5 million this year, which you're getting. You'll have it all by the end of June. They're already started to make the payments. And then the following year, it's going to increase by $2.5 million, and then $1 million, and then I went flat.
That's what you're projecting?
Yes, that's what I'm projecting. So I'm projecting less than what is being advocated for, but I'm also trying to be, see, realistically, I know the state doesn't have the money to do
You're not saying there's going to be a
it.
decrease though, right?
I don't-
You think we'll stay there
I-
and possibly even go up 2.5 million?
I do.
And then we're going to go flat?
I can't imagine that there'll be a decrease.
Okay.
But the other reality is it may come in other legislation.
Right.
So while they're saying here your money's going up, there is the reality that pensions should.
And I just talked to a legislator.
Or some other things, and those things we really don't know. So while they're saying yes here, they're saying.
And I just talked to a legislator, that's a great point, and it's a great question. I just talked to a legislator Friday. I mean, I think that, again, I don't know where the money's coming from. So if they want to continue to go down this track, at some point in time, something's going to happen. And certainly the discussions, at least that I'm hearing, are heating up to the fact that that if they keep funding it with this type of growth, they're going to have to shift some pension to the school district.
Two points I'd like to make. I would say every other week we get an email that they've reevaluated the numbers, and for them the picture's getting clearer, and the election's going to have a lot to do with where this is going to wind up. We're in kind of a lull period now, and then things will be different and clearer or similar and clearer. We just don't know.
Right.
So both sides are touting they want to increase funds for education. I mean,
Well,
whether that's
and that sells.
political rhetoric. or
And that
not.
sells, but it doesn't, there might be another answer somewhere else, because it's still a math problem, no matter how you cut it.
Right, so,
Rob, going back to this picture. Where the fund, or the tax levy drops off. If we were to borrow, we told people their taxes were gonna go down.
Right.
Is there a halfway point? Is there something?
Sure.
Not as high as that, but not as low as
There
this, so
is.
we're not total liars, but be.
there is. It wouldn't be unusual in this circumstance. Again, I'm not, this is not under the form of recommendation, but to answer the question. So it's generally a very efficient thing to do is in a situation like this, is that every December or so, the Board of Education contemplates whether they want to borrow, let's say 2 million or 3 million or 1 million. Something that brings it here, to here. And what I would suggest, under that circumstance, you borrow in like January or February, and you pay it off on December 1st. So it's a 1-year bond. We'll do it every year, and then
Not borrow like $20 million,
no,
we'll pay it off in 5.
you could do that.
Yeah.
But another option would be at every year you make the determination. So if the state comes through, then let's just say hypothetically, you end up with a $3 or $4 million surplus, and you know you're going to get another $3 million next year. Who knows? I mean, that's a decision. Maybe
But
less.
that comes with a reason, a
Right.
rational, not just,
Right.
I feel better if
So,
a fund balance.
so what's happening a lot now? One of the things that has really been a benefit to this area is your Joe McDonald, your township treasurer.
I heard that.
Well,
He's
been in for some of the districts. He's just been buying the debt. So in other words, if you let's just say hypothetically you borrow $2 million, you borrow $2 million. He buys it for the portfolio, so you're almost paying yourself. You're paying yourself and your other districts the interest. It's a 1-year tax levy. He has to give a reasonable rate because everyone else is giving interest, but a fair rate. And then basically, you don't have to go have an underwriter involved in the process. And you don't have to go to a rating agency.
It's is pretty interesting, because in that way, the interest is still going back to, for example, the taxpayers of Midlothian, because 143 is part of that, 146, 140, you know.
Right.
So
Right.
the taxpayers are
So Joe's been
paying
doing that.
themselves that
Uh-huh.
interest, in other words.
And you don't have a multi-year commitment, knowing
That's nice.
there's a lot of stuff that we don't.
Well,
know.
that's.
So that every decision you have the point. So that's definitely a way to look at it. You'll be getting information, Brittany might be reporting that, we're coming in way under budget. Or we're coming in way over, and that may make the decision. And again, it's just optically, do you want to smooth it like this, or if there was options, let's say there were 3 options. Option number 1 would be that we don't do anything, and then once we need the money, we do it. So now the negative upon that is that you potentially would go from 4, if you really needed the money, if things are, you're going to 4 to 8 or 9, you have a $4 million tax increase in 1 year, which some people think that they don't remember this so much, but they'll remember that.
Oh, yeah.
So
They like it flat.
that's what some people said. Some people. The other is on a year-by-year basis, you borrow, $1 million or $2 million or $3 million or somewhere in between, like you're saying. The other is you could do, $1 million, there's an unlimited amount of options. When we were talking to Bill about giving options for this presentation, we recognized that there was a ton of different options, so it was just kind of like, let's just kind of present it and know that within it, there's a lot of different options. But from the questions that I'm hearing, you guys are grasping exactly what the decision is. There's no right or wrong answer. That's why it's kind of like there's a sweet spot that works for your community, and for what you want to do for your buildings. Now, the one thing I'll say is that every year your district has spent, you're always spending $1 to $2 million. You're spending about in your regular budget. You always spent $2 to $3 million a year in capital. So some of those later projects are kind of being paid the way it used to be paid. So really, it's mostly the extra in phase 1 and phase 2, and then maybe the big ticket items like the roofs, right? That's the big ticket items.
Well, the last 3 years, we dropped it down to 1 million, preparing for this and, trying to figure out where the board is and what you guys want to do, so we did some trimming there. But every time you hold back on projects, they don't go away. They still exist, correct, yeah.
And I don't want to get off the subject, but do we have age predictions on those roofs? I mean, as far as, are they?
Terry has age predictions and on equipment, and roofs we're getting our money's worth out.
Okay, so they're coming due then, right?
Right
I mean,
there,
it's-
yeah. Right. Hillcrest,
Yes.
I would say Hillcrest is probably the worst right now.
Yes.
So the other factor is we've got so much commitment to our projects, there's just not enough time to do all of these things at once. On paper, it looks easy, we can get all this done in a summer, but it's just not feasible. So there's a pace that we have to keep in mind as well.
So I would suggest if the path is basically every December, let's make a decision what we want to do, then probably around October or so, let's see how we finish the year, because the audit will be done. Let's see what the budget looks like. Let's see where the capital projects are going, and let's see what the state's what's most current on the state, and then you make a decision at that point in time. So today, the purpose of today's meeting isn't that a decision needed to be made today. I don't know what decisions you need to make for capital. Pretty much all the capital projects for next summer, I'm sure, are already committed.
Yeah, we're committed.
So you have a little time for what what capital projects you want to get, and I'm saying that with today basically being May 1st, you have, whatever, six months or whatever.
So from my point of view, these are incredibly important decisions. I need you guys to talk to me either personally or if we need to do committee of the whole as we go, let's make sure we're communicating. But I'm going to, at one point, and I don't know when that point is, I'm going to ask you for direction and commitment. I'm not going to go into this with, well, I think they're feeling, this is big stuff, so we need to all lock in and commit to it and not back off once we go. So I can take as much time, get you as much information until we commit. Once we commit, we're going.
But if we do this every December, there's a decision, and then we go back to this chart of what we do every. So if we made a decision this July, it doesn't necessarily lock us in for the next.
Well, in the old practice, we would bond for 4 years
Right.
and then it locks you
Right.
in. If you're committed to 1 year progress, we have answers, we understand a little bit better, we move that way. That's, I can, if you commit to that, then we can execute it, so. Or we just continue and, you know, the fund balances will go, but that makes us vulnerable, so. There's a pro and a con to every decision that you're making, so. That's why we need that board direction and commitment.
I think it's better for us and the taxpayers. We know what we're doing and they know what we're doing. And like you said, like, I'll tell you better where you are and you know better what legislation is going to do.
So it's
For next year.
an aggressive conservative,
We know it's not going to get better.
No.
it's an aggressive conservative plan, if that makes sense.
I think on this chart here concerns me the most. I mean, we did talk with these kind of meetings before we got going with our construction, and we did put it out there, and somebody mentioned it earlier about how we're going to reduce, you know, our constituents' taxes. That's what concerns me the most, that we leave that intact as best we can, you know.
With the reality that it may bump, you know, somewhere down, I don't know how many years down the road. You know,
But I don't know if we used that language when we were discussing it and we approved it.
No.
The possibility of it bumping. That's what concerns me, you know.
well, and we were talking about this today. Was it a good faith effort, or was it a promise? You know, and some people will see it as a good faith effort, and we do the best we can to manage it. Other people will see that as you promised it and you lied to us.
Correct.
You know, those are the
The
realities.
11 million, you know?
Right.
We were at 11, we told them to go down, it is down.
It's how much it goes down.
Well, the other thing, Larry, I mean, this is, we're not even talking about this piece. This is what we're talking. We don't have, I mean, you look at this thing, oh, we got a long time to worry about. We don't. We got, you know,
right.
we're in there.
I got you.
And I mean, I agree, I know Midlothian's Park District passed a bond issue based on the information that, hey, your school taxes are going down. So,
Yeah.
I know
You have to be
people in my
very
community
careful
would
with
be irate if it didn't.
Right.
And they're not gonna see this until
You know, I don't,
August of next year. When do they see this?
The drop would be in their fall of 2019 tax
That's
bill.
what I thought, okay. So they're still not gonna, we're gonna have buildings up, we got fields, they're gonna be going, where's my tax break? Well, it's
2018
coming,
levy paid in
but that's when they get it, yeah, that's
It's in the budget.
Because
crazy.
it's always in the rear.
Cook
You have to
County.
remember to tell them. Taxes
Very
are always in
crazy
the rear.
percent of tax years, yeah.
So I have a question that maybe with us not looking like we have such huge spikes in spending, in our other projects, we have in 2021 and 2022 spending quite a bit of money versus 2019 and 2020. Is there a way to shift some of those projects, the other projects around so that we can kind of evenly spend the money and maybe not show, you know, that we have to borrow
The
more?
2.1 to the 5.2.
But the 5.2 and 4.6, yeah, 21 and 22, where in 19 and 20, it's 1.8 and 2.1. So maybe not all of them, but a few, is it possible, to move those around?
Well, just to interject one part. One part of why you're going to be so high in 2019 is that we have the 3 years to spend $52 million for the qualified school construction bonds. So that's why some of those projects have to be hit, at least the ones that are in qualified school construction bonds, which is whatever, $9.7 million of one, and then $42 million or so of phase two. That's why that has to be done. We borrowed it, I think, in December of 2017. So by December 2020, you got to be done.
I think, it's going to be a lot of priority.
Yeah, the other thing, the 18-19 one, the 1.8 is already committed, it's in the works.
Right.
And now Rob's saying the next low one is part of the school construction, so I like what you're saying, but I don't know that it's possible.
Right.
What he's just saying, I don't know
That
that's
makes sense.
possible.
Yeah, and then on the other side is the roofs.
Yeah,
So
so it's almost like you push that outside.
I mean, if anything, just that, I'm just throwing up options, is that you could, once the qualified school construction bonds are spent, you could drag, there's no, you don't have to get every project done by, June 30, 2022. One of the options is, we normally spend $2 to $3 million on capital projects. We could drag, these projects over multiple years. Obviously, I see in school districts all the time, once you start building, there's an excitement that it's hard to slow
and
down.
There's the,
then there's
athletics getting
expectations,
all this now, the
absolutely.
fine arts we're at
So
what
there's parts
year?
that are beyond finances
Yeah.
that
So
sometimes justify
that's,
pushing.
they're waiting quite some time.
But the other piece of that is we don't know what else is gonna, what other building funds is gonna collapse.
Right.
But we still only looking at about 13 million that we have to do in about 2 years, 3 years. So we did like 4 million a year, and that's, I was pushing it out. Unless we can get a definite number, well, it's gonna increase your taxes by $50 or whatever.
somewhere. So it doesn't go down to 70,000. It doesn't go down as much.
But
What
you
about
get
parking lot
$1 million
repairs?
worth of.
I don't see that on here, like, don't all the schools, aren't they all in need of parking lot repairs? Is
not
that
the-
just
or new
factored in,
parking
or new
lots,
parking lots?
I know
Some of
Finland
them will
slated, right?
get repairs because of the construction.
So that's just gonna
But Finley
happen.
is slated for their parking lot.
When is that, Terry? What year are they slated for that?
But I don't see it in parking lot repairs for anybody. Or
Parking
maybe
lot.
I'm missing it. I see lighting, parking lot lighting.
2020? Parking lot lights, lighting, Finley. And I know that's gotta cost a fortune for tenants, that parking lot. And wasn't that under, we were talking bond?
That was,
right?
well, it was in that original,
Right.
yeah, that's a piece that needs to be added.
Okay, so we're gonna have, make a note.
That'll be added,
No, that's part of it. It was part of it.
Yeah, that was original.
That was original.
Well, remember, we had also talked about putting together a schedule so that every other year the parking lots would get done, and then in the interim year that you wouldn't be getting parking lot, if you felt you needed it, it was gonna be part of your regular building budget. So we kind of decided to trade off with that, and then we were, kind of going with feedback with the buildings, where should we start, who needs it first, so on and so forth.
So
But
instead
we
of
do kind of have an idea of what we're.
28 million, now we're gonna have to throw that number on top of the 28, correct?
Right, unless if the building so chooses to put it into,
Yeah, well,
into
that-
their budget, then
that wouldn't-
it wouldn't be.
a building wouldn't be able to absorb that commitment. Right.
Not brand new parts, but repairs.
Repairs.
And look, can I add something also? In the projections that you saw in the fund balance reserves, in addition to all the capital projects in there, I have $1 million a year in other capital projects. That's embedded in our numbers. So know that. So that's
Good
good.
point, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So that's a capital project outside of everything.
Yeah, now it's big and small, so that includes technology expenses and things like that, so I don't know how much, but there is some room for some things in addition to that, within the budget
but
projection.
I want to go back and check with our originals, because part of the completion of phase 2, I think the parking lot's in that completion of phase 2. So we have to, well,
Yes, I remember seeing the changes in parking lot.
right, so it might be included in that number. I'm gonna have to check.
Which is
I think
it's not in the list.
Right.
It's not on the
It's in the plan, but not the list, I believe.
That would be nice.
Yeah, those are the types of things that there's so much detail in this that we have to stay on top of it. But the plan is for Tinley to get a parking lot with curbing, because part of their problem is there's no curb and it just erodes over time. It just slaps it.
Out of these, internet, what is reassessment?
Sure. So, great question.
Well,
It's not dollars, but it's rates.
Right.
Evelyn, could you repeat that question, please?
I said, what out of we're looking at between fiscal year 18 and fiscal year 22, what year is becoming reassessment?
So 2017 is a reassessment, so that'll hit your 2000, so this will be reassessment 2017. Next, when your EAB comes out in maybe a couple weeks, you should have an increase of around 10%, that's my guess. Now that doesn't mean you collect 10% more money, all it means is that your tax rate will be lower. It really doesn't impact the dollars on the tax bill, but your tax rate will go lower. So and it's every 3 years in South Cook County. So it'll be 2017, and then the next one will be 2020. And then every 3 years thereafter.
Well, that's a good year to watch now too,
Yeah.
because there's talk of change in how that's done.
Property taxes?
The assessment, yeah.
They're not going to do it every 3 years.
They're changing
The formula, but
so
possibly.
it's more realistic.
Yeah, they were saying that they were kind of treating the South wrong or something.
Yeah. So you're going to talk with us first before you start putting a recommendation list together for us to consider?
Start emailing questions or pieces. I'll put those pieces back in the mid-month memo. We'll talk in our individual meetings over the summer to get what concerns you have or what direction. And if we need to have another committee of the whole, we can revisit this as many times as we need to make a good decision.
Really, if you look at the puzzle page, that's
Yeah.
the question in a nutshell. That's great. So that's it. You do those pieces in the
Yeah, right.
They don't fit though.
I can't
It's fine.
This one.
There's a plan for that parking lot up there. No crest. No.
Well, that's the recommendation. It's kind of law, right? 3.5 months of the.
Yeah, 3 months, it's a recommend, it's, that's what the state recommends as far as minimum. That's all it means. I mean, you still have money in the bank, you're not broke at that point in time.
What do they label
Rental lights.
as? And
Well,
there are labels if you don't have those.
Well, yeah, so there's a metric that the ISB uses to calculate your financial strength.
Yes.
And one of it is fund balance reserve.
Yeah.
So it could knock that down one, which, whatever that means, it's,
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't put you, I don't know, I mean, it puts you in a situation, so I guess look at it this way. Ideally, you never have to borrow, right? That's obviously the case. But whatever money you have in the bank, that's the community's money anyway, right? That's not only for the kids that are in your schools now, but their little brothers and sisters, future people that move into the school district.
Right.
So having fund balance reserves raises the probability that while these buildings are being used, and you have these nice facilities now, not that you didn't before, that you're going to be able to maintain quality teachers, you're going to be able to maintain good programs, maintain good buildings, have good technology, in perpetuity, versus other school districts I go to that we're talking about, what are we going to cut that's going to impact student learning? So it's more of a negative thing. If you have the reserves, then your academic people could do the things they need to do to help your kids, and your extracurricular people could do what they need to do, and you could always focus on what can we do to make things better versus what do we have to, what we take away that has the least negative impact on our kids. So that's the nice thing about having the fund balance reserves. So and again, if the state does what they're saying, maybe you have balanced budgets and it's not that much of an issue.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
All clear now, huh?
It is. I think you guys I think it's
Well, we can't
exciting.
look at doom and gloom. We got great projects going on.
Very exciting.
We just completed great projects. We got good things to look forward to. So, it can't be all doom and gloom.
What-
We're going to do our very best. to keep
One of the
dollar
things,
down.
this is just a side note, and just because I have the opportunity to go to work with a lot of different school districts.
Yeah.
One of the schools is Stager School District. And they put in a new junior high, they put in some really nice improvements in STEM labs, or younger school, and all these things. And what I suggested to them, which this will be the second year now, is they have a breakfast, and they invite all the realtors there. And they kind of, here's our schools, as promote, encourage young families to move into our communities, because we got some great schools. I mean, it's kind of parallel to this district. There's so much cool stuff that's going on in
We
this
used to
district.
do that.
Yeah.
We used to do that.
When we were talking about these projects, that was one of our that was a catalyst to this, is being able to sell it to the people that are possibly looking at our communities that come in and move in. So,
Keep them from moving out.
I mean,
and keep them from moving out. Yeah.
Yes.
Look what this district has and this district doesn't. I mean, I think we're really putting ourselves in a good position to be looked at as a
there's some neat
district
and exciting
moving.
things. As the south suburbs, and I've lived in south suburbs all my life, there's a lot of crumbling going on. You guys are improving stuff. You're gonna stand out.
That's what we like to hear.
So our enrollment can go from 5 to 6,000.
Yeah.
We gotta ask more people.
But then we get more state aid.
You have no more time.
Okay, well,
Bremen's
Bremen's
there,
right there already.
yeah. Yep.
I was asking about what we're gonna do, because we're gonna do another level. Because it's bursting out, I said.
After 2022.
Okay, well, good.
Yeah, we have one more piece that Brittany needs to talk to you about. She was going to do it in a finance committee meeting, but I think it's important.
Is this
for the
read
whole
the
board.
fine print?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Rose.
Yeah, very nice.
So at the May 8th board meeting next Tuesday, we're going to be having a public hearing that will be to basically transfer a fund balance from the operations and maintenance fund to our education fund. This is because we ended fiscal year 2017 with a $9.5 million O&M fund balance. This makes it really hard for our attorneys to fight tax objections. So in order to combat that, we're going to move the funds from O&M and into the ed fund. But in order to do so, we do have to tell the public that we're doing this. So we're going to have a public hearing before asking the board to vote on it later that night.
And I think, just for the rest of the board members who may not know this or remember it, if we put the money in the ed fund and we need it, we can transfer ed
Correct.
funds to any fund.
Correct.
where we need
Right,
it.
to transfer.
But you can't transfer operations and maintenance funds
Right.
someplace else without.
They just brought up at
Yep.
the long breakfast.
At the
Yes,
breakfast,
exactly.
yes.
Yes.
So that's exactly what this is for.
Good.
And that's what these tax objections, that's what they look at, is the fund balances. And then
And
they
the
put in a
ratio.
rate objection. And then they kick it out of our next paycheck.
That's all we
Very good.
Our announcement is our next board meeting is Tuesday,